Good morning, everyone. For those of you who did not see the post on Jewish Gen about Yisrael Crystal, I just want to mention what has happened. Yisrael Crystal, 4 years ago, was identified as being the oldest man in the world. Um, a living in Haifa, Israel, born in Poland, but records of his birth did not survive. And so 4 years ago, when we were contacted, we managed to find records that pinned down his year of birth, which was 1903. And that was the end of it. He was certified. Guinness World Book of Records went to Israel. They gave him a certificate. There were videos, etc. However, a book has just been written called Exceptional Lifetimes, in which Yisrael's Crystal story takes up 10 pages. This book is not a documentary in any way. It is not a, it is a monograph that is focused on the story of exceptionally long living people, why and how, etc. It's a 300-page book, and there are 10 pages devoted to Yisrael Crystal. And it's very fascinating. And you can download the book, you can download the chapter. If you go to the JRI Poland, and let me share screens. Can I share screens? Yeah, I can share screens. If you go to the JRI Poland website, let's go right here. And announcements. No, that's not it. I'm embarrassed. In the news. So this is the story. Validation of 113-year-old Israel Crystal as the world's oldest man. And that's this one chapter. And if you go here, you can actually download just the chapter. And it's extremely, extremely well done. These are all the different sections of the book, and you can see that they've covered a wide variety of topics related to the age of people. So that's one story, and I will come back now. Just stop sharing screens. The other story is what happened 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks ago, I was speaking to Ken Cohn. I don't know if you know the name. He's a lawyer in Toronto. And it was basically to thank him for a very large donation to JRI Poland. And we got to talking, and he mentioned en passant that he is a grandson of Rabbi Yudel Rosenberg. And for those who may not recall the name, he was the esteemed rabbi in Montreal, the chief rabbi. He was the one who was the arbitrator of the kosher wars. And you may remember Ira Robinson coming to our meeting and lecturing on this whole topic. So after I got off the phone with Ken, I said, I think I'm going to surprise him and see if I could find any Rosenberg records that he's not aware of. And I found some records. I found a birth record of Yodel Rosenberg or Yudka Rosenberg. But I wasn't sure that that could be him because the name appears all over Poland, the name Rosenberg and variations. So I went online, and just to get an idea of what's written about him as to when he was born or where he was born. And the first thing that pops up is Ira Robinson's new book about Yodel Rosenberg that's just about to come out. It's published in December. But it doesn't indicate that the book is already available. So I called Ira right away and I said, Ira, I have Yodel Rosenberg's birth record. And everything that's written about Yodel Rosenberg. Remember, he was a judge in the Jewish court in Poland, then in Toronto, and Montreal. Very, very esteemed. And none of the other references had a date of birth anywhere near close to what it actually was. All the books say he was born in November 1860. This was the logical one that people had looked at, and some document somewhere, some testimony somewhere. Yet the birth record showed that he was born Erev Christmas Eve in 1859, a year older than he was known to be. 11 o'clock on December 24th in 1859. And what was most important was that the certification, that is the witnesses who came to witness the documentation of the birth record, were important people in the town, and the record was made the day he was served.
Sorry. Stanley, I muted you by mistake.
Am I okay now? Yeah, you can hear me. So going back to what I just said, just in case you missed it, the birth record was created 7 days after his birth, after the day of the circumcision. And that is important because so many records in Poland were written a year, 2 years, 5, 10 years after the birth. And so finally, for the first time, there is proof of when he was born. And amongst the records I found were the death records of both of his parents, which people didn't have as well. And so I picked up the phone and I called Ira and I told him, and he said, "Oh God, it's too late. The book is, being printed." He's, I think, and the book sells for what, $119, a real bargain. So that was on Friday. On Monday, he wrote me and he said, "The publisher has agreed to hold the book. I'm going to add this to the book." So we've managed to rewrite history. And if you go to Wikipedia, it shows the same error. So I guess you could say it's a feather in our cap that we have this record. But what is even more, frustrating is the fact that, I should explain why no one's found it before. So he was known to have been born in a place called Szczecin or something. And the record shows he wasn't born there. The family was living there at some point, or they may have had some relations there, or that after he was born, the family moved there. But he was actually born in a small village 7 kilometers away, and his father was a cow tender, or a cow, somebody who leased a plot of land and tended cows. But the records themselves were written and registered in Radom, 20 kilometers away. So, it speaks of that famous joke by the man who lost a golf ball. And they said, "Why are you looking over there?" He says, "Because the light is better there." And that's exactly what it is. People looked in the wrong place if they had looked at all. And that, of course, is also the power of the indexing of records. Okay, end of story. Who's got some questions? Andreas, you're muted. You're muted, Andreas.
If there's an entry in Wikipedia,
I'm sorry?
everybody, if there is an entry in Wikipedia that is wrong, everybody can fix it. I know how to do it. You can do it yourself. You send me an email.
Oh, to unmute yourself. Yeah. Okay.
The other thing I want to say that I have a subscription now to Philae, which is the database for the French BMD records. So if anybody wants data from between 1850 or so, depending, until 1900. No, yes. From France, so I have the access to that database. Philae has about, I don't know, at least 50 or 90%, don't know what percentage of all French BMD records from the French Revolution to 100 years ago.
So this is a site that you subscribe to?
Yes.
So if anybody needs some French research, they should write you.
You should write. They can, well, they can join. It's about $100 a year or so, or 50. I don't know. I got the rebates, so I joined.
I laugh when people say it's only $100 a year, not because it's $100 a year, but I hear from so many different people, subscribing to Ancestry is this, subscribing to MyHeritage, to to the newspaper one, to the telephone, unlock the American telephones, and you start adding it up. There's a lot of $100 that that it goes on. And then if you want to be on some of the other platforms, it's also an extra dollar or two. Anybody have any questions this morning? Nobody has any questions. Yes, Meyer.
Yes, good morning.
Good morning.
I'm looking for immigration to the US. I was looking for my family in Ellis Island and I could not find them. I know that there were other records.
I'm sorry, you're looking, just talk more slowly, please, because the sound is not.
We'll try. I'm looking for immigration to the US.
Right.
I looked for my family in Ellis Island and I could not find any record, but I know that there are other points of entry. So how do I find them?
Well, the first place that I would look would be using Steve Morse. You're familiar with the Steve Morse One Step website?
I know that it exists, but I never.
Okay,
really...
so let's take a look at it. I'm going to share screens. We're going to go to Steve Morse and stevemorse.org, and we'll go to other ports, and you'll see Canadian passenger lists and Canadian border crossing. So if they came through Canada and went to the United States, which many people did, in 1 year, I think 1906, 1 million people entered the United States by sailing to Canadian ports, because CP ships offered a very, very special rate. in order to get the passengers. And the way in which they did that is they had agents all around Eastern Europe, in the towns and even in the villages, who were selling passenger tickets to America via Canada. So what is the name you're looking for?
Rothenburg.
Rothenburg. Okay. So we're looking for Rothenburg. We'll say exactly, and it's the
could be with T or with TH.
No, it won't be with an H. An H will, when they arrived, it would be with a where were they from? Poland?
Poland.
Yeah, then it would be no H.
Okay.
The Poland's name, where at least my mother's name was spelled with R-O-I or R-O-J, Rothenburg.
Yeah. Well, we'll just see what's there. So there are 83 Rothenburgs going to the United States from Canadian. Now, some of these people are immigrants to the United States who were already living in Canada. Some are Canadians who are just going to the United States on business. And the vast majority are those people who arrived on a vessel with intentions of going directly to the United States. So what was the given name?
One was, in America, it was called William, became as Zev.
So it'd be Wolf, probably. And I don't see a wolf here.
I don't think any of them came for Canada.
Well, you know what?
It's possible.
I was looking for my grandfather for years, and I could never find him. And I found that he arrived through the departure lists in England. I found that he arrived in Boston, not in New York. So I don't see Wolf here as well. No Wolf.
Okay, and the second one is Laser in US. It was called Louis.
Well, let's just go back for a second, and we'll go back to we'll go back here, and the reason why the Steve Morse site is exceptional on passenger arrivals is you have a number of different options. So we go back here and you'll see what they are. US, Ellis Island. So you have what he calls the gold form, which creates a different kind of presentation. You have the all passenger lists here, New York ship list and family search, which is free. So let's try that's the ship list. I don't want the ship list. I'm sorry. Ellis Island, New York passengers, family search. So let's put in Rothenburg. And when did they arrive approximately?
One in 1913 and one in 1914.
So we'll put it between 1911 and 1915. And hits per page, 70, well, we'll put 99. And Rothenburg will use exact spelling this time, just to start off with. And of course, I have to sign in. And no results. So we'll try with an H now, just in case they had family ahead of time. No results. All right. So what are the other options?
Other ports.
I'm sorry?
Other ports. Maybe they came through another port. Philadelphia, Boston.
So we'll try Boston. And we'll, instead of exactly, we'll put, so we have Israel, Chaim, Esther, and these are Ruth Rotbergs, and no, nothing close. Let's try Rottenberg, just in case that will be a difference. Israel, Pinchas, Gold, Isaac, James. And so that's Boston. That's the two logical ones, other than Philadelphia. Philadelphia went on the East Coast. And we won't even put in the years. Let's start off with exactly. 25 results. Okay, so when that happens, then the question comes up, how do you find the passenger arrival for somebody? I can tell you that my grandmother and the children who came over in 1893 to join my grandfather, I have not been able to find their records. And the question is why? And I can tell you from experience and from what's been written on Jewish Gen many, many, many times, the way in which the record was written almost defied figuring out what the spelling was. And even in names, you think about the Quebec marriage records, the Quebec marriage, what do you call it? The registrations of marriage and the statistical returns of marriage. And you look at how many of those have incorrect spellings, and they just simply, whoever did the work did not take the time. The other important point to keep in mind is that Family Search is not the only one. So if we go back and we go back to, and here we go to, let's say, the gold form. Let's go to the gold form. Okay. Okay, so this is the Ellis Island gold form. We'll put in Rotenberg. Starts with or is Rotenberg. And we're going to show all the Rotenbergs. And you can see there are 251 Rotenbergs. And we're looking for a wolf. And we're going to go to the next entry. Wolf Rotenberg from Bialystok?
No.
Okay. Now, you said his name was William, but William is not necessarily Wolf. Excuse me. And it could be that he was registered under his Hebrew name. Not likely, but it could be Zev. And I don't see it in Zelik. And where was he from?
Rovno. Rovno, today Ukraine.
Rovno, yeah, okay. So let's go back here. And we'll go back here. And we'll put in ship name, first name. Where's year? Well, we'll put the year of arrival. 1913. Well, we'll put it between 1911 and 1915. And we'll put in sounds like instead of, and see what comes up now. 384 entries. It could be Rottenberg's. Here's a William, New York. Born 1880, came in 1912.
It's possible, but he moved directly to Chicago.
I'm sorry?
He moved to Chicago.
Well, but he may have arrived in New York. That's
Yeah.
So let's take a look
No,
here.
the column says residence.
And what we're looking is the passenger record. Let's look at the I can't here. Let's view the passenger record. Log in. Oh God. William Rothenberg, New York City, 28.
He's already a US citizen. No, it's too early.
He's, yeah, so that would not be the case. So we go back here and we go here. So we don't see William here. Let's go here. And you have to, so there is Wolf from Bialystok again. No. So anyway, you know, what all I can recommend is you try different configurations. You try, for example, to search only on passengers arriving from Rovno. So let's say you put in, I don't know if there's a place to, but in some of the searches, for example, let's do an update here. This is in Ancestry. And so you pick immigration and emigration, and you can put in different things such as where the town or so here we go, all collections, and we want the United States, and we want something like that, and we want to edit search. And so we're going to put in a keyword, and we're going to put in Rovno. And we'll put in male just to keep it a little bit. And we put in search. 27 from Rovno. Sam Meyer, Eva, Moritz, Claire Hirsch. So there's all 20.
Hold on. The one before last, Laser. Yes.
Laser?
I told you I have two uncles. It may be him. It's the right name.
Okay. Arrived in 1901.
Place of origin? No, it's too early. No, it's not him.
Well, Rovno, I think, was...
Yeah, but he arrived more like 1915, 14.
Right. Laser, Rodenberg, Labor, Romania. Oh, he's from Yassi. No, I don't know why it came up that way, but it did. So anyway, I'm not going to, spend all the time on that, but that's just an illustration of having to work one by one on all the different options. Finally, the last option that I would say, but maybe one be the first for you, is post on Jewish Gen. You've got some very creative, innovative people who are always delighted to be challenged to find a passenger on passenger. No one took up my challenge. I tried. I won't say no one. Several people did, but they came up empty. So that's what I would suggest. Judith, welcome, Judy.
Thank you.
Unmute yourself, Judy. There we go. Now we can hear you. How are you?
Hi, I'm fine. I'm sorry to be late.
That's okay. The train is still at the station. So you have a question that we can help you with, Judy?
Not at the moment. I'll have to think.
Not at the moment. Okay.
Thanks for asking.
Meryl, unmute yourself.
Just a quick question. To get information from Steve Morse, you have to create an account?
No. Steve Morse is wide open.
Okay, because you said something about logging in when you were at Steve Morse.
Well, the thing is, what Steve Morse is providing is called the one step. So he is giving you more options to search an existing website. In some cases, that website is, there's a fee, let's take Ancestry.com. And since I'm a subscriber to Ancestry.com, if I want to search it, it's already always open on my computer and I can see it. If it's Family Search, the Mormon site, you have to click and log on each time. And the same thing with the Ellis Island site. So that's the reason why. But many sites, for example, in case anybody's not aware of it, and of course, a lot of these sites are available and can be searched through the JGS of Montreal dashboard. And if you haven't seen the dashboard, take a look at it. But let's take a look at something that it has a great value for all of us, and that is and let's go here. And what we're looking at now is the Montreal, and it's under Vital Records and Steve Morse, but it's the Montreal city directories. So here we are searching the Montreal city. This is so much easier than going to the Bibliothèque Nationale site. So let's take, Perlman, and we want to know what year we're going to look at. Gary, somebody in your family. Gary?
Let's see, 1920 is good.
1920?
For sure.
Okay, so we'll click on 1920. We'll go to name, and it's a PDF of about 100 pages. So you have to wait for the PDF to load. And so now we have to go down to the Perlmans. And the Pellerins. You come to some of these French Canadian names and you'll see Perl. So we have Perelman. And so you can see all the Perelmans in Montreal in 1920 where they were living, and often two addresses. So Joe apparently was at 677 St. Catherine and lived at 592, well, one of the, I don't know, one or the other. Max is a tailor, and what is useful about the city directories often is if you see, okay, we know that Max was living on Cadieux, next door to some of my relatives, I'm sure. So 1154 Cadieux. Let's take a look at Cadieux. And you don't have to spell the whole thing because it's going to give you the general area. And we go to Cadieux. So 1154 Cadieux. 1154 Cadieux, we see Max Perlman. But we also see next door was, Joe Belofsky. Ah, that's where cousin Joe lived, right next door to his brother-in-law, Max Perlman. And you take a look at these names, and you can see most of them are Jewish. Cadieux was, sorry?
Stanley?
Yeah.
You'll notice that on the street directory, it says Perelman, whereas in the name directory, it said Perlman.
Right.
So one of the nice things about loading all these, hundreds of pages in the PDF is that you can scoot around quite a bit. There's also PEARL that's worth looking for.
Yeah, for sure. If we go back to where we were looking at before, no, that wasn't it. And we go back to the name. And you look at, we won't talk about more here. Let's go to.
While you're scrolling, Stanley, you can also search within these pages.
Yeah,
the
that's
character
true.
recognition isn't ideal, but it's worth a try.
Yeah, so
while you're there.
It's a control find Perlman. So here we are right away at Perlman. And if you go down here, no, we don't see, in this case, the Perelman, but we have to remember that
Perelman would be on the previous page.
Yeah, you have to remember that this was done by typesetters, and typesetters had here's another example, Permenter, and here it's Permentier, IER. Which one is correct? Is it a mistake, or is it because two cousins spell their name differently? Okay. And that's one of the, like I said, beauties of the site that we're talking about, the one-step site. Oh, God.
Thank you. That was helpful.
Yeah. And the other thing to keep in mind about the one-step site, let me just. Oh, Steve Morse, just stevemorse.org. Is there many things that you don't expect to see? So let's say take a look at genetics. From DNA to genetic genealogy, family tree DNA markers. And that gives you insight into things that you don't necessarily find on the website. Finding DNA distances in one step. And there's so many different things that you can do, but you have to wander around the site. Creating your own search applications and viewers. That if you want to create your own search engine, And if anybody's worrying about, wondering who Steve Morse is, he is the man who developed the first computer chip, the 8086 computer chip. Lives in San Francisco. A funny man. His hobby is collecting old telephones. So if you have a telephone from outer Slobovia from 1810, he wants it. His wall in his house, there's one wall, these amazing old phones from every corner of the world. And you can see. So the other thing is about Steve is that if you have an idea for a site that is not currently helped by one step, he will consider actually doing it, as he did for us for the Montreal City Directory. But here's also for English to Hebrew translations. So you write it in English, you get the automatic translation. Of course, these are available on various websites around the world anyway, but Hebrew print to cursive. He just does a lot for all of us by providing these many options for research. And many people just forget about it. That is, they go once, they try one thing, and they forget that this site exists. And he actually, with Alexander Bader, the fantastic expert in Paris, the Russian mathematician, he and Alexander Bader created the Bader-Morse a matching system. And if you are not familiar with that, let me just show you what we're talking about by illustrating on the J.R.I. Polin website. So let's search, for example, on my grandmother's name, which is Videlitz. And if we put it phonetically and we search, there's 201 records. And every Videlitz is one of two families. Now, if we put sound alike, which was the traditional one that people used, and we search, and we have 1,745. And so let's look at my situation. If you go to this town here, Videlitz is a sound alike with Petlak, because the P and the W have the same value. The T and the D have the same value. The C and the K have the same value in a Soundex search. So that's why it's so vital to utilize the two different methods. Now, one of the things that you should not do is say, okay, I will only use the Bader-Morse system. And that's because there are misspellings, and you sometimes can catch a misspelling by using the sound alike. And often there are spellings that you would never anticipate. So that's another reason why. One other thing, if you're searching on J.R.I. Polin, try this as well. And that is, I'm looking for a surname, try a fuzzy. And if you're not familiar with fuzzy, it gives you a search of the same name, but with one letter moved aside, if you will. So here, take a look at Charna Vizelitz. Charna Liba, her name actually is Videlitz, not Vizelitz. Is there anybody who wants me to try something in J.R.I. Polin and look for them? Nobody. Okay. Well, let's take a look at Krakow.
Stanley, Len Roth has had his hand up for a while. He has a question.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Lenny, go ahead. Unmute yourself, Len.
Okay, talking about Steve Morse, he's going to be giving 2 lectures in the next couple of weeks through the JG. So it might be very interesting for people who attend those meetings.
Yeah.
Hello?
If you, yeah, we can hear you, Leonard. Of course. Oh, good morning, Philip. The announcements of Steve Morse's lectures usually are on Jewish Gen, done by different societies, and they usually are very worthwhile. They are also often very entertaining, as well as being informative. So it's probably worth your time, particularly if it's after 8 o'clock in Montreal, when you have to stay home. Although if you read the Gazette yesterday morning, what's his name? All of a sudden I got a mental block. Page 2 of the Gazette says he's going to dress up his cockatoo as a dog so he can go for a walk after 8 o'clock.
Josh Freed?
Sorry?
Josh Freed?
Yeah, Josh Freed. Yeah. It's always worth reading Josh Freed. And if you don't get a subscription to the Gazette, check it out online, because he does have a wry sense of humor. One other thing, when we start talking about research in Montreal, keep in mind that there are business records in City Hall. You can't go down there now. Obviously, there are registrations there. That it's the only place where you see them. There are also other sources at Bibliothèque Nationale that you might not think of right away. And Gary, if you would demonstrate for us the vital records, the Jewish vital records on Bibliothèque Nationale. Let me explain to you what Gary will show you shortly. As you all probably know, the JGS of Montreal purchased the microfilms of the Drouin collection back in 1999. And we fully extracted all those records. Then we converted those microfilms to digital images, and we went through them again to perfect those extractions. Then Ancestry purchased the digital images, and they sent them to some place in the world. I think it was the Philippines, to do the data entry. And the data entry ended up with lots of errors online on Ancestry.com. So if you wanted to get an accurate picture of what our records look like, contact Vitals at jgs-montreal.org. And for those of you who are not familiar with the way in which this data has been fully extracted, I'll demonstrate that in a second. Gary, you want to show those images, vastly improved images?
Oh, I see what you mean. Okay, so I share screen. And okay, so I should be sharing. And we just want to get to the dashboard. And on the dashboard, there's Quebec and Montreal. And let me think. So I'm looking for the civil records, I think. Okay, so Quebec has pretty good quality scans of various images. And let's take Beth David. And you can look at what documents they have. And these are arranged by date. There's sometimes an index. So if I go to 1901, I can look at the index. And so here's a handwritten document. There's only one page here, but I can go into January to June or July, and I can go from page to page. If you know the date of something, you can find it pretty easily. And let's see. I'm trying to figure out a way to view the image in a new page, but I can't. So there's always
There's a plus sign at the top there, Gary.
okay, I can zoom in, I guess, right?
Yep.
Where is that plus sign?
To the right of, go left, right there. Oh, you missed it. No, one there it is, right there.
My screen is misformatted, so I can't see it.
Right there,
Let's
yeah.
see. Okay, so here's that. So you can see details that you can't see. There's Drouin collection records in Ancestry, and also at Genealogy Quebec of these, but they're not nearly the same quality.
Yeah, that's the whole thing, that these have been actually rescanned from the original rather than from the microfilm, and that makes the difference.
So if you look at this record from Drouin, this is from my great-grandparents' wedding in Montreal in 1901. So that's quite a find. But here's the same record that shows a lot more detail. So you can see the signatures in a lot more detail. You can see my great-grandmother not signing her marriage record, because that's not her writing. But you can see a lot of details that you can't see in the black and white images.
So you're bringing up both on your website.
This is just an example of this page.
Oh, just the example. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, now I understand. Thank you. So the important point is that you're getting to see something really live. You can see the different color in the signature, which is helpful as well in terms of saying, okay, the rabbi wrote the record and then the signature came afterward. Not like I was just going to add, not like we've seen in some cases where the signature, where the rabbi said, sign the book and I'll fill in later. And we do have examples of that. Examples for the great example is one where you have two marriage records side by side, and the bride and groom have signed the wrong record in each time. Basically, they probably couldn't read. I don't know. But that illustrates why you might learn something from an old record that you just assumed had nothing new for you. Okay. Thanks, Gary. While you're there, Gary, while you're there,
to follow up on that,
yeah,
on this page with the different synagogues, some of them are marked new for 2020. So these are synagogues that were added just in the past year. And so there might be some records that people had hoped they would find there, and now they can find them. And to your point, my grandmother, Jeanette Rudman, was the daughter of Golda Rudman, but that was her aunt. So all of these records are suspect.
How come that Abram Victor and Jeanette Rudman they have the same writing. It looks to me as it were.
She didn't sign her name. And also, every time her name appears as Jeanette and so on, it's spelled differently because her name was Schlema. And everyone called her Schlema, and everyone knew her as Schlema, but her legal name was Jeanette. She didn't know how to spell it, so it was always spelled differently.
And remember that the rabbis, their first language wasn't English. And therefore they really messed up the spelling. Take a look at daughter of Ittik, which is, Itzik or Yitzchak. And you look at the different spellings, that should be, if they were really concerned about the spelling, Itzik would be I-T-Z-I-C-K or I-K. This is a situation through many of the records. Where it's different is if you go to the Shara Shemayim or the English and Polish and German synagogue, where you had typically rabbis that came from England, then you had very clear and very appropriate English spelling.
Well, if you look at the signing rabbi on this document, that is not someone who grew up writing that script.
It says
That's beyond bad handwriting. That is foreign handwriting.
No.
it says before T on the sound.
And you can see, look at it says signature of party, P-A-R-T-I-E. I think that tells you all you really want to know. Thanks, Gary. Is there anything else on the dashboard that's new or that you'd like to just talk about for a moment?
I don't think if I scroll around, I can look for things would be tagged as new, and I'm not seeing anything that's new. So same old dashboard.
Yeah. Why don't you just go into Jober again for and just talk about the information the additional information in Jober that.
Okay, so earlier you were talking about Udall Rosenberg. And if we go over to Jober, there's 2 records in Quebec. And here they are. This little icon here on the left means there's an image there. And we can look at that full record. And so here's the full record in Jober, has the birth date of 1860, which is relevant. At the bottom of the comments is a link to our website. And on our website, we have you have over here some text. And we have a volunteer, Steve Goldberg, who translated it for us. And we also have things like the obituary from Kennedy Radler that's been inserted in there. And you have more pictures. So there's the Ohel that he's in. And here's a plaque that's outside. And there's other pictures in the area. So we have more information than we're allowed to put in Jober. And so you can find a lot of information that way. Over here, there's a link to his wife. And so you can follow that. And just for fun, if we go back to her husband, especially on these special burials like the Ohels, there's GPS coordinates.
And by the way, Gary, just let me interject that Udall Rosenberg, that's his second wife. His first wife died very shortly after marriage in Tarlov, Poland.
Anyways, here is the GPS coordinates. And so they're quite accurate. And one thing that's interesting is that Google Maps has been inside the Barn de Hirsch Cemetery. And we can look around there. And we can go along the road. And you can see things that are there. That's sort of fun.
You drive around with your camera cars?
Right. They've been in, I think, several cemeteries. You don't have a lot of detail from the roads, but you have more detail than you would have expected.
Oh, by the way, Gary, while you're showing that, you'll notice that it. Oh no, go back to the here. Take a look under obituary. He grew up in Skorish, Ukraine. You see that? In the first sentence. That is an error. He grew up in Poland, not in the Ukraine. And Skorish is actually Skores. Like I said before, he grew up, but he wasn't born there. He was born in a little shtetl, a village that was so small they didn't even have any records for that village separate. They were kept in Radom. So this is an illustration of all the mistakes that have been passed on for generations.
And these particular mistakes are in the Kenneter Adler. So that was from 1935. So we can send a change notice to the Kenneter Adler and they'll have that fixed up in no time.
This is a remarkable presentation of information, and thank you, Gary. This is just, I don't think there's any other society that's gone to this length to present genealogical information related to their citizens in their town. Why don't you just do an ordinary citizen, like somebody in your family, Gary?
Sure. Let's see, if I go to the dashboard, we go up to the top, we'll do small, Reuben, and so there should be lots of records for Reuben Small. We can look for Canadian naturalization. Maybe I shouldn't have chosen one of the slowest sites on the internet, but it's not there. I think it's actually under Schmolik. Okay, and we can go in and we can find a record on the Canadian site and see his naturalization.
You want to zoom it?
If I could only find the zoom control.
Okay, go higher, go higher.
Well, that's working.
You got it.
No, it's not. Nope. I think the screen sharing is covering it up.
Oh, okay. Well, there it is. But we can see it. If you could just scroll to the left.
There you go. So there's Reuben Schmolik. And one thing that's interesting about that is that he's a manager and his certificate number is 10631E. Series E means that it was based on a previous naturalization. And so there's another naturalization somewhere in the records that would be useful to check up on. If we look for a burial for Reuben Small, we can do that. And so that's the record in Jober, which has lots of fields filled in, but there is a link to more information at our website, and we can throw in things like his wedding picture from 1929, multiple grave photos, the marriage record from 1929, and so on. And for example, he is in genie.com. And so that gives you access to an entire family tree. And so when it says more information, it has 1,505 people in his family tree. So that's more. And let's see.
Gary, is there anyone who has a special interest in finding this information for one of their family members in Montreal?
Sure, let's ask.
Anybody watching?
Don't be shy.
Don't be shy. Okay. We have a lot of shy people here today.
One of the things that I find is useful about this is that all of these searches are queued up and ready to go. So if you wouldn't ordinarily search in Find a Grave, well, you could, and there it is. Or if you wouldn't search in Kennedy Adler obituaries, you could, and we didn't find anything. So it's only a click, and it doesn't take you very long to check these things out.
Yeah, just one point, by the way, about the Kennedy Adler obituaries. Many of these are for people who died outside of Montreal, relatives of Montrealers who were the obituary, the Yiddish obituary in the Kennedy Adler was included. So sometimes it can be a surprise. My grandfather, who died in New York in 1930, his obituary is in the Kennedy Adler.
What was his name?
Max Diamond. No.
Didn't like it.
Oh, there we go. Yeah.
I have a question in between. So you, Rosenberg, was born 1859, is that correct?
Who?
Stanley, was Judel born in 1859?
No, he was born in 1860, December 24th.
So I will change.
Sorry?
I want to change that in Wikipedia to put it 1860.
Yeah, it has to be changed. You know,
I will do it right away.
you make changes in Wikipedia?
Anyone can.
Everybody can change anything in Wikipedia.
Yeah, I know. I just haven't had the chance, and I want
do
to.
it right away.
And Gary, let's talk about that when we have a chance, okay? I'd like to
Sure.
make that Wikipedia change and give the reference to J.R.I. Poland.
Sure.
So, so we don't have the obituary for my grandfather?
No.
That's strange. Oh, it may have been spelled differently. I'm not sure how it was spelled. Maybe it was Dimond. I don't know. I think you can scroll through in some way. No.
Can't find it.
It's there someplace. Okay. Never mind. And one other thing about, you know, and you have the notarial records of Quebec that are online. And I found notarial records of my grandfather selling property, buying, renting, various things. And this sometimes gives you information that you weren't aware of. A picture of your ancestor's life that was totally unknown in the family.
from the dashboard, you can just go into, for example, ancestry.ca. And so there's lots of things in there. I'm going to limit it to Canada. And so here's a family tree that he appears in. Here's arriving passengers. I don't think that's the right person. Other arriving passengers. And notarial records would be under, I'm not sure, Stanley.
Are they? I don't know. Are they on Ancestry? I think they are they?
I think some are.
Yeah, I can't remember. Well, let's search.
Try court, land, wills, and financial.
Oh, very good.
There we go.
So there's wills, estates, and so on.
Why don't you bring up a sample?
Sure.
Well, that's Manitoba. Let's try.
Wow.
Yeah, often these are indexes rather than the actual document. The Quebec ones are documents, at least that are on the Bibliothèque Nationale site.
Uh-huh.
So there's one at the top for Monsieur Jean Fortin.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, these are indices so that you can identify the number and then you can go to the actual site. Probably there's a description of how you do that on ancestry.com. Okay. Any questions in the house? No questions in the house. I don't see anybody's hands up.
Thank you very much, Stanley. We're not all passive, and we're actually listening and enjoying it. And thank you, and thanks to Gary and Vicky and all the other participants.
Okay, well, thank you for mentioning that. Just as a matter of interest, I don't know whether you're all aware, but Family Tree DNA has merged with My DNA, a company from Australia. Now, I'm not sure, you know, when they say merged, it usually means something more. Probably the company from Australia, which is headed up by a much younger man than Bennett Greenspan, probably acquired Family Tree DNA because Bennett and his partner Max are now just members of the board. That's number one. Number two is, what does that going to entail? If you look online, you'll see My DNA has specialties in other areas. So those of us who have done DNA with My DNA are probably going to get some additional tools, advantages, educational items in the future. The same thing is just talking about it, that GEDmatch a number of months ago was acquired by a commercial firm, and they have just announced that they are going to be putting up a new website. I think that's what the announcement was. And I imagine that GEDmatch is going to be able to, or is going to, in their intentions, is to provide a much more useful and easily navigated website than what they're presently presenting. So anybody who has done a DNA absolutely must upload your DNA to GEDmatch, and where you can is to download the raw data and upload it to the other sites. So if you've done DNA with Ancestry, you can download your raw data and upload it to MyHeritage. And the interesting thing I've found from doing that is you get hits on the other sites that you normally don't get on your own site. And I think it's Ancestry, where all my cousins that I, have in my family tree, so many of them are visible on Ancestry. I don't see them on MyHeritage. I don't see them on 23andMe, and I don't see them in Family Tree DNA because they've only done the DNA with Ancestry and not bothered to upload them to the other sites.
May I ask a question?
Who's asking a question?
Oh, Judy,
Yeah, go ahead, Judy.
are you aware of any individuals who passed away in the late 1870s or early 1880s for which a death certificate was not issued?
Where was this, in Montreal?
No, actually the person lived in Montreal for a short time and then moved to Toronto. He passed away in Victoria, British Columbia on his way back from San Francisco. And I have searched high and low in Ontario, and I've just dealt with the highest authorities, in statistics in Victoria, BC, paid a huge fee for a search for his death certificate, and they came up with nothing.
So what you're saying is, if I understand, is excuse me, that how do you know that this person died?
He was a very well-known personality. He was one of the founders of Holy Blossom Synagogue in Toronto.
And he died in 1870?
I think it was 1879. I have all the details.
And well, one of the options is to search old newspapers.
Oh, well, we found there was a lot of publicity because he was repatriated to Toronto, and there was a huge funeral with a procession through the streets and everything. So, yeah, obviously.
And does the obituary specifically say where he died?
Oh yes, we know exactly the date, and in fact, in Victoria, I found one documentation on the internet saying that his death was registered in a certain area in downtown Victoria, but there is no death certificate.
Oh, interesting.
So was this a familiar situation in those days, or did he just slip through the net?
What I would suggest you do, if you've tried everything, is to reach out for the Genealogical Society of Victoria. Every small town has a genealogical society now, right. Not necessarily the Jewish Society. And since only Quebec had the Jewish records separately, they would have been a civil record, right. In Victoria. And you never know who may have discovered that there's a whole series of missing obituaries, and it was done some.
Oh, sorry, it's not the obituary that I need. I wanted the.
I'm sorry, the death record. There's a whole series of death records. I'm sorry, that are missing. So I can tell you from my own experience that I have reached out to the Genealogical Society in New Brunswick, and they were wonderful in finding a document for me. So, the world of genealogy is a world of giving. Everybody,
right.
Everybody is trying to help everybody else.
I will try. You never know.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Very good. Any other questions? No other questions. Shia, no questions today?
It's not really a question. I mean, I think my story is not unique. I think finding information is always amazing, but we did we did find, whoever knows from the start of me joining, I kept looking for my mother's father and grandfather, where they came from and all the information. And it turns out it was right at my doorstep on JRI. We still haven't confirmed it. I'm still waiting for someone to get back of the information. But I think that I would share is just keep searching. I think that, you know, don't let people tell you that, you know, the information's not there. It doesn't, it's, you know, whatever I have on file won't make a difference. I don't need to send it to you. Keep pushing the boundary with it. Turn over the stone, leave it alone, turn it over again, because you don't know, something always crawls underneath it, and you can always keep searching it. It has so many levels. There's a town, there's the information, but there's also the individual itself. So not focusing so much on where people came from, just finding about that my great grandfather was the vice president of the Polish Russian Society of Montreal. We had no idea. Thanks to Gary, and I don't think Gary gets enough credit on the matsevas, on the stones. If you have been trying to search names on Jewish Gene and finding the stones, you don't always have a picture of the stone. But any stone that you need in De La Savin, or there's other cemeteries, Gary has it there. And it's amazing because a lot of his namesake, a lot of it is tracking down based on the name, not necessarily the last name. It's sometimes the first name helps it as well. So the Gary, your website is absolutely phenomenal. I don't think people pay enough attention to it. But it's worlds of information, and the details that you have on it, whether you're able to put the death date and the pictures themselves, to load them up, to put them on to your tree or whatever it is, it's really, really, it kind of is like a finishing touch. But I would say that just keep, whoever is listening, whoever's searching, just keep searching. Don't get discouraged. I think it's very important. There's a lot of information there. Newspaper articles, the Yiddish newspapers, and yeah, that's that. Yeah.
Gary, why don't you give us an update on, for those who may not be aware of our situation now with the other cemeteries that we have now got permission to do, and the cemeteries that have still not responded.
Okay. Well, there are several cemeteries that have traditionally not given us permission to take pictures and index. And those include Shar Shemayim, Temple Emmanuel, Beth Shalom, and Kahal Israel. And we're in negotiations with all of them. They're very slow negotiations. They're on a genealogical scale of time scale. So I don't know if we have permission to announce that some of them have agreed, but some of them have. And sometime this year, a bunch of stuff will be going online.
And we haven't heard back from the Sharhash, correct?
No, we haven't.
Yeah. They haven't even answered our letter.
You might be right, Jess.
Yeah. It's sad. It's very frustrating because we all know, Andres, if in a second, we all know of cases where the cemetery records in Montreal have made a difference in people's lives, really have. And one of the things that comes up over and over again is when somebody passes away and the family doesn't know the Hebrew name to put on the matzeva. And we have had so many over the years, people write to JGS in Montreal and particularly to JRI Poland, because we have a way, of course, seeing what the family tree looks like. And if a man's name was Jack and we find his grandfather was Yaakov, you know, we're going to be able to say, look, it's undoubtedly the case that he's named for his grandfather, giving people that assurance. And in some cases, and was in my case, I came back from Poland my first trip. I was at the cemetery and I saw that my grandmother's grave, and people have heard me tell this before, that the name of her father on her gravestone was her father-in-law and not her father. And so my brother and I had the gravestone changed. As I've said, I don't know what my father and my aunt were drinking when they put that name on the gravestone. Yeah. Marilyn?
I just had an instance recently of somebody whose brother died in Toronto, and she wanted to know what his Hebrew name was. This is local, but I ended up speaking to somebody at the Shara Zion who had the books. I knew that they were members, or I don't know. I looked all over the place, and I found somebody who was able to find that information for me within a half an hour.
Now, when you say the books, just a second, Victoria, the books, you're talking about stuff that is in the Shara Zion records that have not, that the post 1942 records.
I guess it was in actually Rabbi Cohn's.
Yeah, okay, that would be from 46. Since I was his second bar mitzvah in 1940, it was, I know exactly when he arrived in Montreal. Yeah, Andres had a question first. Unmute yourself, Andres.
I changed the date in Jenny because I found out that Wikipedia cites Genie.com for the date of Joel Rosenberg. So I changed the date there too so it was December 24, 1860. The thing that I now wanted, maybe Gary can help, put.
Oh, okay. Well, I want to put a J.R.I. Poland reference in there, so we'll work on that, Gary. Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, Vicky.
Oh, it was just about not knowing what the Hebrew name was for stone. I had the same experience recently, and I spoke to the cantor at Shara Shamayim because I know him, Gideon, and he found out for me right away. And I just wondered, whom have you contacted at the Shar?
Well,
Gary.
We'll talk this privately.
Okay, just
yeah.
I'm happy to contact Gideon.
Well, we've tried a number of different avenues at different points, and they seem to be very protective of their information, and I put it in these terms. It's not the Jewish way to resist being helpful and to be making a difference. I like to tell this story because to me it is the most significant thing. There have been so many cases where one record has absolutely changed things for people in terms of finding their own identity and all the rest of it. But the story I like to tell is what happened in 2001 when I was meeting with the Polish State Archives director, and he was congratulating J.R.I. Poland on having 1 million records. And I said, well, Director Biernat, and this is through the translator, we don't have exactly 1 million records, or some. And our representative, Chris Malchevsky, translated, and you could see his face sag, because he'd been a great supporter, and he is to this day a great supporter of J.R.I. Poland. And it was like we had lied to him. And then I answered, we have one record 1 million times because every record is important. And the big smile that came on his face is something I'll never forget, because he said, absolutely, I understand. Because this man is a historian and he knows how every piece of information is important. We have such a good relationship over the 25 years since we started that since he retired 2 years ago, we have become better friends. I'm now allowed to call him by his first name, which is a major achievement. But this whole concept of one record being so important, and I can tell you that it also is a subject of, I'll say, controversy. Why is it a subject of controversy in JRI Poland? The example is what happened last night. A lady by the name of Mady Land said, I need to know if there's anything more in that 1896 birth record for this man in of the Warsaw records on JRI Poland. Now, in the case of the Warsaw records, where we have hundreds of thousands of records to extract, and particularly the Russian ones, for which we pay professionals to do the work, our town leader decided to save money by not including the other towns in the record. And typically these records refer to where the father was born, the mother was born, or some other town. In Warsaw, of course, you have many families that lived there for generations. But it's always possible that there was a connection to another town, which takes the research off in another direction. And that, for me, it remains to be part of it. It remains a frustrating decision that that we made as far as Warsaw is concerned. Today, we don't do that. Today, we try to fully extract all the information, and particularly those notes in the margin that were added at a later date. And we've just had a remarkable example of that, where the notes referred to a court case, and the court case, this is a 1899 birth record that refers to a court case in 1946 that was added to the birth record. And that court case is about a huge fight about property in Poland after the war. And it's something I keep on telling everybody. Every document counts. Even when you've got 5 birth records for 5 children in a family, they may not all be the same. And we've got cases where you see the mother's name as being the same as the father's name in 4 out of 5 records. That 5th record has the mother's maiden name. Why? Weiß nicht. But the important thing is every record counts. Don't make assumptions that one, like as a good example, if you look at the birth records of my mother's siblings in New York after they arrived in 1895, 5 children were born. 7 children were born in New York after they arrived in 1895, then came to Montreal in 1909, where they had a few more. However, each one of those children born in New York between 1895 and 1909 was born in a different house. What people say, well, how come, or different flat, different address, because they already had 2 or 3 kids sleeping in the same bed. And it gets to be a point where they have another child, they have to move, they need more space. And the same thing applies in my father's family. My father's family arrived in New York in 1890. There were 4 children born in New York, each one born in a different location. So it tells you something about the family tradition, the family living circumstances. And also, of course, you can now look it up on Google Maps. In many cases, these walk-ups in the Lower East Side of New York are still there. They haven't been changed, haven't been torn down, replaced by a high-rise. So you can actually capture a photograph of the building where somebody was born. And of course, most of the children were born, the babies were born at home. And that's why in the case of Udo Rosenberg, when they say where he was undoubtedly born at home in this little village, not in Skarishov that we saw a minute ago. If there are no more questions, oh, yeah, Marilyn.
It's not a question. It's just, I think I've mentioned it before, but I will mention it again. Two things happened to me, and that was reverse. And you were talking about Sharsheim Cemetery. My great grandfather is buried there. His name was Somer Hass. They had him listed as Hass Somer. So I never thought of it until I said, can you just look up your database on one of the names? And of course, the names were reversed. So they never found him on his last name, which I think they have changed. And in Baron de Hirsch, my family is Signer. And there are a few Signers in there, and I couldn't understand why I couldn't find anything in the office. It was under Singer. So just little transpositions like that. And as a matter of fact, I found out that Signer in some places was Jaguar, which you'd think was totally weird. But the S looked like a G, and you can go on and see how it could be Jaguar. And in some of the vital records in Drouin, it was under Jaguar. So never give up.
When you say Jaguar, what was the spelling that they used for Jaguar?
Giguer, which the G could be an S, I, G, which is legitimate, Signer, the N could have looked like a U. ER, so that's perfectly understandable that with the writing, that's what could happen. So it's amazing. I was flabbergasted.
I can tell you that we've had some embarrassing circumstances in JRI Poland when we get letters from or email from Israelis who have a tendency of putting their last name first. And if you don't know the Israeli naming way in which they do it, you often mix them up. And we have also have records in JRI Poland where you have Herman Wolf as the fat man's name, but his name is really Wolf Herman, and that's a problem because there's a lot of first names that have become family names. So it's another one of the things you have to sort of think about when you're having a challenge in finding a record. You won't find, somebody with the first name Rottenberg, but at the same time, anything is possible in these records. And I think if we start adding up all the different strange things that we found, we'd probably need 100 volumes to document them. It is now 11:40. Since there is no additional questions, we can bring this to an end. Leonard, you have a question. Please unmute yourself. Unmute yourself, Len. Now we have a picture of you and Anna, but not unmuted. Now you're unmuted.
No, I'm unmuted. Okay, the rabbi that you say was raised in a certain city, that means raised. It doesn't mean that he was born in that city.
Yeah, exactly.
So you could be adding another phrase where he was born. So you're
no, the Wikipedia, we're going to change that Wikipedia thing. And in fact, if it's possible, we can actually we'll have a record up on JRI Poland and a link to the actual birth record with the translation.
Right, but the city that he was raised in or town still could stand.
Yeah, of course. Of course. Look, you look at my grandchildren, born in one place and have lived in two places by the time they are, 7 years old. Where is their, where is their town of origin? Where they were born, or where they lived in a while, or where they lived most of their lives? We have so many cases of somebody born in Poland who emigrated to Argentina and then made Aliyah to Israel. So, what is their country?
Right. No, birth is birth.
No, I understand that. But from a point of view of where they left their mark over a period of time, it's unlikely in many cases that it's the place of birth.
Right.
But for, as a genealogist, we want to record those things for sure.
And sometimes people are born accidentally somewhere, like in a plane. People were born in planes above the Brazilian jungle.
Or born on a boat. Yeah. Where was I born? Latitude 42, longitude 16, something like that. Okay, folks. Let's all be well. Let's hope we get our shots sooner rather than later. And let's all hope that the inauguration of Joe Biden goes on without any more what we've witnessed this past week. I've been in touch with some family members who are politicians in the United States, and they are scared. They are absolutely scared. I just got an email. In fact, it arrived just now. I haven't read it yet, from a man who had run for the Senate in the United States, and I think 2 elections ago, and he was defeated. And he is a supporter of J.R.I. Pollan, one of the people who made a major donation for our matching grant. And it's, I don't know if I've told the story of why he made this great donation, but he's just, I know, just shocked by what's happened. And this is a good example of why every record counts. So this man, his name is Howard, sent an email to me because he read that I'm the coordinator of the Ostrov Mazowiecka research family, which is where J.R.I. Pollan started, and we have a separate website. And he wrote and he said, I'm looking for the birth record of my mother and the marriage record of my grandparents from Ostrov Mazowiecka. And I look and I found the birth record of his grandparents, but not the marriage record. And his mother wasn't there. And then he said, oh, no. She was born in Warsaw. Now, why did he want these records? Because he wants to apply for a Polish passport. And to apply for a Polish passport, you have to create that timeline with documentation proving where they were born, where they were married, and ensuring that there's no subterfuge in some way. He was very disappointed, and I said, well, let me look further. And so I checked the books of residence of J.R.I. Pollan, which are 1890 to 1931, what's called the first series, written or printed in the Russian language, and then entered in Russian up until 1915, and then in Polish afterward. And his grandparents weren't there. The family was there, but his grandparents weren't there. And the next thing I decided to do was, let's look at the later books of residence. Now, we were allowed to scan the original books of residence for my genetic research, which got me started, but we weren't allowed to scan or to microfilm at the time in 2001 the later records, because there were too many births that were subject to Polish privacy. But we did create an index. And so I looked at the index, and lo and behold, there was his mother listed and his grandparents. Now, why were they in the 1931 to 39 books of residence when his grandparents were married in Warsaw in 1936, and his mother was born in 1938? we needed to get the actual page from the books of residence to see what the information had. And so I called our representative in Warsaw, and he called the director of the Pultusk Archives, explained why this was urgent. And because we have a great relationship with him and most of the directors, he photographed it on his phone and sent it to Chris right away. And it was a miracle, because the family, the mother and father and the daughter, his mother, moved back to Ostrov-Mazowiecka in 1932. It documents where they were living, where they were born, where they were married, and when they came back. A full picture of the history of those key individuals that he needed. And that's why he made a very, very large donation to JRI Poland. I should mention that he and I are both graduates of the same business school, just by coincidence, and that he is married to probably the most beautiful TV actress on television, and I'm not going to mention any names. But anyway, it's a heartwarming story for me, because it ends up by just illustrating again what one record on one page can mean to somebody. That may change his life in future. It may give he's a serial entrepreneur. It may give one of his children, he's got teenagers, the opportunity to move to Europe, take advantage of a commercial opportunity. Although I must say, so many Americans over the last 4 years have sought Polish passports and Canadian passports. So they would have an option if things further unwound in the United States. And what's happened in the last week is certainly gives one food for thought as to whether they were wise or not in going through all this trouble. And certainly I'm a little bit more, I was never unsympathetic, but I'm a little more understanding of that inner feeling of wanting to have a safety net in some place. Folks, it's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Stanley.
And we'll see you again sometime soon, God willing. So be well, stay safe, and let's hope for the future of the world. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank